Hello.
Hi.
All right, everybody, clap it up for our filmmaker here. Welcome to NYC Web Fest. Lauren, what's the name of this block again?
This block is The More You Know. It's an educational one.
I see. The More You Know block.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you all so much for being here. I'd like to pass it over to our filmmaker to introduce himself, and for those of you who didn't see it, give us just a brief synopsis of what your film is.
So my name's Eitan Badouk Epstein. I wrote and directed and produced Preparing for Eel Season with a handcrafted wooden eel spoon. Or as I like to call it, eel season in emails and text messages, because that's probably easier to communicate. Yeah.
Definitely. And where'd you come into NYC Web Fest in Miami from?
London.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Our international contingent. We're very excited to have you here. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. This was one of 3 films that screened in this block. Four films that screened in this block. Thank you very much. And you have such a wonderful actor leading the film. Could you please tell us what his name is and what it was like to work with him on the final product?
So, probably before I knew what the story was, before I knew anything, I just knew that I wanted to work with Pat. Pat Cahill is his name. He's an incredible comedian. I've seen him up at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Like, every time I go up, I'll go and see his show, because he always does something different, but it's like always him. And yeah, the goal was always just to make something that expressed what he does and what he can bring to the audience, but in a short film format, because I think he's like a genius. But
no big deal. So can you talk about what it was like to, because it was so focused on showcasing Pat's skills as a performer and storyteller,
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you helped shape his performance, the story, how you sharpened it maybe for the camera?
yeah, I mean, so like we kind of met up for a pint, as you do in the UK, and we kind of just had a wide-ranging conversation about, like, I don't know, just trying to find things like to match up upon, and we stumbled on like the fact that we both love this show from the History Channel, from this part of the world, called Forged in Fire. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's like X Factor or American Idol, but with swords, and it's amazing.
It does sound amazing.
And basically, we both realised that we love like watching eccentric men like craft things in their basements and garages. So I think that was kind of the idea, and then like from there it was a case of like, I suppose, getting it so that, well, yeah, we could showcase his talents, because like, for instance, the song we did at the start, it's very much like his wheelhouse. He loves, so he wrote the song. I wish I could write a song like that. And that was also the first thing we shot on the morning, and it was like stuck in everyone's head the whole day. And like, there was no moment in the, like, in between shots and things where someone wasn't singing it. But yeah, in terms of, I guess it was like, shaping it was kind of like watching YouTube videos, like craft videos, like finding the weirdest people who make things on the internet, but also like watching, like, there was a show from the UK called Look Around You, which is made by Robert Popper and Peter Serafinowicz, Peter Serafinowicz was on like Guardians of the Galaxy, and very funny character comedian, and that was like parodying like videos for children in the 1980s, where they have like, I don't know, it's just very eccentric, very weird. And then also Tim and Eric, Tim and Eric watched a Tim and Eric sketch called Trag's Truff, where Fred Willard, rest in peace, was teaching people how to make like blended chicken breast.
So it's a lot of research around the type of videos that exist in real life of these kinds of people
Yeah,
who are so interesting and unique and aren't shy about being that way.
exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Because I guess, because he's a stand-up, like, it's kind of, you don't want to dilute what he can bring to the screen with, like, other people and him bouncing off people. I'd rather just see him be him.
Yeah.
And, like, express that. Yeah.
Well, let's go into that then. It segues nicely into something else I wanted to ask you about. So, even though this is a solo performance for Pat, there are still relationships that exist in the story, right? Yeah. I'm always curious, having made a mockumentary myself, I'm always curious about the relationship to the film crew that's off camera. And the wall is really broken towards the end of your film. Can you talk about that relationship and how that...
I think the more I wrote the script and the more like the character of Morris came out over Pat, which is cool. I guess that's like my part to play. Can't just owe it all to Pat. It was just kind of fun to think like of these people, like these crafts people on the internet who have like their lives just can't help but like break in and like ruin what they're doing and make them the butt of the jokes. I think that's always important to like I don't know, there's only so many times you can have like, well I guess he like cuts his finger at a certain point, but there's only so many jokes you can do like that. I think the comedy comes from like him trying to do this craft video and like so many things getting in the way of him like achieving what he set out to do, but still achieving it.
Including raising children. I've never seen so many years covered so quickly in a movie ever before in my entire life. So comedically. Well done with that.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass it over to the audience in a second here, but I had one question. Yes. Okay, so there are parts in this film that are like borderline, for the horror-averse like myself, that are borderline spooky.
Yeah.
Right? So there are like times when the main character gets so angry that you like kind of don't know what's going to happen. And that's alleviated really quickly and well with super sharp editing cuts.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the, like, I don't know how you want to speak about this, but the comedy in the edit of going from one to the other so quickly, and why do you think that works so well, especially in this piece?
I guess it's always like from coming from like, so this was my first short film, but coming from like a live comedy background, just sharp contrasts like work to create comedy. Like, I don't know, I think the idea, you don't want to settle in moments too long, you don't want to overstay a welcome. I think it's always better to just like get out and like assume that something bad has happened. I think there's also comedy in like not knowing what's going on and having missed something and having the editor, who's I suppose a character, like saying to you like,
sorry,
the
joke's on you, basically. Yeah.
It's so interesting because in comedy, like I'm always a firm believer that in storytelling, confusing your audience is typically bad news. But there's a difference between confusing them and making them feel like they might have missed something and they want to know what it is. Do you agree?
Yeah. I guess it's like, similar in horror as well. Like choosing what you want your audience to see. But yeah, like you mentioned horror, I should also bring up my...
What's your next project?
Right, there's that point. We were just talking about a script I'm working on. But before we get to that, my director, my cinematographer, Arushi, did it. Yeah, it looked like a painting, like the opening shot. I thought I should bring her up because she was amazing. And also the horror scene at the end, I think, definitely worked towards her because she likes to shoot horror movies. So I was like, let's like horror this up. Basically, let's get some more red, some more black.
I love it. let me not go on with my own thoughts and pass it to the audience. Does anyone have a question for Eitan? Yes, please, go ahead.
Hello. First of all, so funny.
Thank you.
I was curious also when you made this and if it had any relation or like inspiration almost from the pandemic, is what you were talking about in terms of like people's lives interrupting what they're trying to do. Made me think so much of like when we were all on Zoom and suddenly you have like lawyers from court with their baby crying in the corner and like how much of that became part of what we're seeing of people's lives. Which this like reminded me of parts of that as well.
So I mean, you're right in that. I'm not sure. Like maybe subconsciously, a lot of it leaked in, but like I didn't set out to like. I think I came up with the idea about before COVID, and production was like delayed indefinitely because of that old chestnut. But yeah, I think for sure, like it's just funny, isn't it? Like one of the best videos ever is that BBC one
with the baby,
with
like
the baby.
yeah, exactly.
It's pure comedy.
Or the one where he's a cat. Have you
Yeah,
seen
the
cat
other,
lawyer?
the cat lawyer.
When he taking
yeah.
the filter off his face. Everybody.
Yeah, no, it's there's nothing. Yeah, I think what you want is just like a character who has a very firm belief of themselves and like takes himself very seriously, and for that to constantly be challenged. Like I think that's kind of always a good place for comedy to work in. Yeah.
Amazing. Question in the back?
I'm curious about scouting location because that woodworking studio was so specific. I'm wondering, was that something you found and went, this is amazing, or did you actually dress that?
No, so it was, so it's a story in and of itself, like how I got that studio. So the film was done, it was my grad project for the course I did at the National Film and Television School. The person who was organising that, his uncle knew Colin, who ran the woodworking shop. And it was like, luckily 15 minutes drive away from the school, which is in Beaconsfield, which is just outside of London. And that was great because it meant that I could get the van for free that day because I could own it. Would just like we just rent it from the school, drive it there, drive the van back, and then get it for the half an hour at the end of the day. So that was money saved. But then, yeah, Colin, who ran the shop, was like a character in and of himself, and it was like I wish I had a separate camera crew with me while I was meeting him, because he was just like bizarre. So he does all the woodworking for Eton College, where all the prime ministers come from, and
Do you breed them there?
yeah. Sadly, yes. It's ruining our country. I don't know if you've noticed. And yeah, he was like a mad guy, and I think like the madness of that shop like definitely influenced the film. Like the space just kind of added this like energy, and yeah, I was like, the thing was, I ended up bringing my own wood because I was so scared of him. Even though he had like a timber yard outside. I was like, I don't want to like upset him because he's obviously done me such a nice favour and like lending me this space for a day. But I ended up like going to my local park and picking up like a giant log. Yeah. So, yeah.
Any other burning audience questions?
Oh, I have one.
Yes, please, Lauren. Come on, you guys, welcome.
I'm sorry also if it had already been asked.
No, it's okay. What's up?
Okay. I was just going to, yeah, keep that there. Ask, I apologize if it had already been. I just wanted to know, because you were talking about comedy and the comedian that you sort of went after for the role. How much has like British comedy played into this? Like it kind of, you know, I'm South African, and so I grew up watching this, and this is like what my parents like to watch. So I like those types of like Benny Hill, like those like silly British comedies. I
Yeah.
wanted to know how much, I apologize if this was already asked,
No.
how much that played into this type of film. And also
Yeah.
why a film and not something episodic with him? Did he just not have the time, or?
Oh, so to answer that last question, it was a short film for my grad project, and I guess I'm working on another thing with him,
Okay.
which will be longer and and gooder, but also in terms of British comedy. So interesting that you mentioned that. I think for me, so like my mum's an immigrant, she's from Israel, and I'm Jewish. So I've always felt on the outside somewhat of like English and British culture, and it's, I think for me, like looking at Pat, he's what like represents like English and British eccentricities, like British comedy, and it's like really fun to come into that world like from a complete like outsider's perspective and like play with it, and but like I suppose like respect like the rules and respect like the tradition,
Right.
but like I guess it's always there, like all
Right.
the influences. For me, like my personal heroes were always like the Mighty Boosh, if you saw that, which was very surreal, and then but then I always loved like American comedy as well.
Right.
So it's, I don't know, I feel like we're always in like dialogue, British American.
What about the Jewish comedic sensibility? Being a New Yorker, I know it well, and having a mom from Israel, does that influence you as well comedically?
Big time. I think so. The funny thing was when I used to run these comedy nights. That's how I met Pat, and my mum came to one. And she saw him afterwards, and she was like, "You're hilarious. You're like Little Britain." I don't know if you guys ever saw that show. It's not like okay anymore. There are bits of it that are still really funny, but But I think she meant that. She didn't mean that from like you're racist and you sort of like degrade other people for the lols, but she meant that in the sense that like you represent like this, like I guess he's saying he's from East Anglia, which is like the northeast of England, and it's like very the jokes about East Anglia are kind of, I suppose you have similar jokes about like Nebraska or something. So it's like, I don't know, I always say it's always fun to come at this from like an outsider's perspective. I wouldn't say necessarily in this that the Jewishness comes in at all, which is fun for me. It's like cosplaying almost.
When Jesus was a carpenter,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
It's in there somewhere. It's in there
Yeah.
somewhere. I have a last question for us, but does anyone else in the audience have a question? Does anyone else have a question while I remember what I was going to ask? Yes, of course. What's your favorite memory from making this film? It's like a capstone project for you, uni, right?
Yeah.
So like doing this and making your first type of short film like this, what was your favorite memory?
Oh, that's a really good question. Maybe like, I don't know. I think maybe like the night before, I was doing a Zoom rehearsal with Pat, and he'd been like growing his hair over lockdown, and he showed me his like finished beard and mutton chops, and I was like giddy because it was so funny, like that he'd like ruined his face like that for my film. I was just so happy that he'd done that for me, and that was a really lovely memory. And I think the least favourite memory was Colin, the woodshop owner, slamming the door on us as we were leaving because we overran by 2 hours. Yeah, so I was Colin.
Wonderful. Could you please tell us how to learn more about your work, follow your work updates?
So I'm pretty bad at self-promotion. I will say that short film is on a YouTube channel called Mr. Box, which I think I'll probably continue to put things on because it's a great platform for alternative British comedy, and like there's so many more things like that I'll promote. So like, we were speaking with Marina yesterday about Staff Let's Flats. I don't know if you guys have seen that, watched that, but I think a lot of things like that started on that platform. So I'll hand it over to that. I do have an Instagram, but it's like got a grey square and a blog.
Oh my God, people! Good luck. Come to NYC Webfest if you want to meet Eve.
You can find me in the woods.
His phone number is +44.
I think off the back of this, I'll probably set up an Instagram and then, and I'll comment it on Mr. Box, preparing for eel season, and then you can follow me on there. And I'll put up I've been sort of cataloguing all my America moments in this holiday.
Perfect.
Such as the demolition this morning.
Yes, footage to be posted online later, apparently. Thank you for the puzzled pathway to find you for all of our viewers. And let's give it up one more time for Ethan.